Today we're going to be reading Penguins by Alan Wood. If you need to push pause to get your book and open it up, please do so now. Let's read together and answer some questions along the way. Penguins by Alan Wood. Penguins by Alan Wood. Our table of contents. Our sections include all kinds of penguins on page 3, penguins in cold places on page 6, penguins in warm places on page 8, and penguins of the world on page 10. All kinds of penguins. Many penguins live around the world. Some penguins are big, and some penguins are small. Some have tall feathers on their heads, and some do not. In the photograph, we see labeled rockhopper penguin. So this book is about different kinds of penguins. If we look here on page 3, we see the rockhopper penguin. We also see all kinds of penguins as the label on top, our heading. So we know our heading is kind of like our topic for this section. So it tells us that this section is going to be all different types of penguins. Here, we've learned that many penguins live around the world, that some are big and some are small, and that they have different types of feathers. So in this section, we've learned that there are different types of penguins. That could be the main idea for our topic of all kinds of penguins. Let's continue on with this topic. All penguins have short legs. They have webbed feet too. They do not have wings, but they do have long flippers. All penguins can sing. They can also walk, jump, and slide, but they cannot fly. In the photograph, we see a label that says sliding. Remember, labels on photos can help us better understand what is shown. Let's look at this photo and the label. What's the label say? Sliding. What is the first penguin in line doing here? The book says the penguins have webbed feet. Scuba divers wear flippers, just like we talked about yesterday. These are like webbed feet. How do you think having webbed feet helps penguins swim? Most penguins live near oceans. They are great swimmers. They use their feet to steer through the water, and they catch fish to eat. Penguins have special feathers that keep them dry. On the bottom, we see a map. Remember, maps can add information to our text. In the top sentence, it says most penguins live near oceans. Yesterday, we looked at which continents have penguins. Above the map, there's a label or a caption, we might say, above a photograph that says red areas show where penguins live. Can you point out and read the continents in which penguins live in? All right, what is the heading on this page? Yes, it's penguins in cold places. Most penguins live in cold places. Adelie penguins live in Antarctica. They make their homes on the ice. They have a thick layer of feathers that helps them stay warm. Rockhopper penguins live on chilly beaches in South America. Here we see the label Adelie penguins. Look at the photograph. What do we see in the photograph that helps support what we learned in the text? Emperor penguins live in Antarctica too. They are the biggest of all the penguins. Their bodies can stay warm in the cold. Even junior emperor penguins are larger than many other birds. Below in the photograph, we see the label Emperor penguins. We learned in the text that emperor penguins are the largest penguin. Look at the photo. Why do you think the penguins are huddled together? How would this protect the junior or younger penguins? Penguins in warm places. That's our heading. That's also the topic for this section. So, what do you think we're going to learn about in this section of our text? Other penguins live in warm places. Fairy penguins live in Australia. They are the smallest penguins. They have tiny bodies. They are also called little blue penguins. In the photograph, it is labeled fairy penguins. Look at the size and shape of our fairy penguins. Some penguins live on sunny beaches. They do not have to worry about the cold. Sometimes they get too hot. They can stay in the water to keep cool. Cormorants. Look at the body, size, and shape of these penguins. Now, I want you to think for a minute. Look at the cormorants. Then let's go back. Look at the fairy penguins. Both of these types of penguins live in warm places. Now, let's look back at our emperor penguins. Look at their bodies. And the Adelie penguins, look at their bodies. Why do you think the body sizes and shapes are different for penguins in cold places than they are of the penguins in warm places? Now, penguins of the world. For a long time, people weren't sure how many kinds of penguins there are. Scientists finally agreed that there are 17 kinds of penguins. Find the penguins from this book on the chart. Let's look at the chart together, friends. We see the names. We see Adelie penguins, emperor penguins, fairy penguins, Galapagos penguins, and rockhopper penguins. Over to the right, we see warm or cold places. So we can read down and match where each of the types of penguins live. So, how does this chart help us? We can use this information, we can compare. Let's see, how many of our penguins that we read about today live in cold places? If you said 3, you're correct. The Adelie penguins, emperor penguins, and rockhopper penguins live in cold places. How many live in warm places? If you said 2, you are correct. The fairy penguins and Galapagos penguins live in warm places. Great job, my friends. Now, this week we are talking about main ideas and details. Let's take a look at this chart. What is the main idea of this book? In our chart, it says penguins live around the world. One detail is some penguins live in Antarctica. Can you find another detail in your book? Go back and search for another detail. Can you find a detail that supports penguins live around the world? It should be a different detail than some penguins live in Antarctica. Go back and be a detective. I can't wait to see if you can find another detail to support our main idea. Great job.